Here we go. Hello, YouTube, and welcome. You are again seeing everything just before I get the main podcast up and running. So this is just a bonus for you, because the anyone listening to this on the podcast will not hear or see this part. So, hello. Right, here we go. Podcast recording. Everything's recording. Hopefully the sound's going to come through. So, 3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to this week's Sweet and Salty Movie Review podcast. This week we have If or Imaginary Friend and an in-depth review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Now, I did say last week that I was going to go and watch Furiosa this week, but that's because I can't tell time anymore. And Furiosa is not out till next week, so that's what I'll be watching next week. So instead of seeing that, I went along to see the If movie, If standing for Imaginary Friends, because I thought, why not? We don't get to do a lot of kids' movies on this particular podcast. And it looked like a very interesting and intriguing movie. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Then we've got our in-depth review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Interestingly, I had to go back and run through what I'd watched in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So quite telling that it didn't really stick around in my head too much what was actually covered in that. Anyhow, we'll get around to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in a moment. First of all, though, If or Imaginary Friends. So, what can we say about this? Well, the trailer doesn't say much more than what the trailer tells you. After discovering she can see everyone's imaginary friends, a girl embarks on a magical adventure to reconnect forgotten ifs with their kids. And that essentially is the entire movie in a nutshell, if I'm being honest. But this is a very, very, very well put together film. So this is so it's obviously you can go, everyone can go and watch it, anyone can go and watch it, take the kids, doesn't matter how young they are, although obviously at a certain point they won't understand what's going on. If you are listening to us in America, there is a massive cast of all sorts of TV personalities in here that many Brits probably won't have heard of, as well as some really big names. I mean, they could reel them all off here. I mean, John Krasinski is obviously he's big from The Office or the US Office, but he's also well known for A Quiet Place, which you may have Emily Blunt, who he's married to. He is, he's massive in America, very well known across here in Europe. But he is also the writer and director for this. Fantastic. Callie Fleming plays his young daughter, whose name has escaped me for the moment. Then we've got Ryan Reynolds playing Cal, and these are kind of the characters you see, you know, and you understand. And then you're going to have a load of fun trying to figure out who all the ifs are. And to give you some idea, you've got Emily Blunt, Steve Carell, Awkwafina, Blake Lively, Matt Damon, Louis Gossett Jr., Fiona Shaw, you'll know because she's a grandmother. Brad Pitt, there's a challenge there. Try and figure out who Brad Pitt is before the end of the movie. Give it a go. That's quite a challenge to work out, that one. Vince Vaughn, Sam Rockwell, Bradley Cooper, George Clooney. It's just, Keegan-Michael Key. Just so many different stars all had bits and pieces in this. And then for the American audience, you've got Jon Stewart, Amy Schumer, Bill Hader, Maya Rudolph. They're probably a bit better known in the US than they are in the UK. Huge cast, and this is a really beautiful film. It's one of those movies where the music never stops. It's not a musical, but the music just constantly plays and flows on with the characters. It feels like the whole thing feels like it's slick on ice. It's kind of, you start at the beginning and you just slide through the story. It never stops. It never feels like it's slowing down. It never feels like it's picking up too much pace. It's a really well put together film. How am I trying to describe this? From beginning to end, it feels like you are just or sliding along on ice. There's no disruption, nothing to stop you. No ways, no ripples, no gravel, no nothing. You just go all the way through to the end. It's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. God, this is a terrible set of metaphors. Yeah, take some tissues with you. It is one of those ones that really does pull at your heartstrings in all different directions. Um, Phoebe Waller-Bridge as well, another big name in this. There's just huge, just lots of people in this. Yeah, I really, really would recommend going to see this. Even if you don't have kids, go and watch it. It's a really, really great film. Um, I don't want to say anything more than that until next week, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. Hour and 44 minutes. Yeah, depending on who you're dating, pretty good date night movie. Yeah, go and watch it. It's great fun. And as I say, it's good fun. It's very funny, but it's also got there's a lot of very poignant moments in it. We'll have a bit more on that next week, but moving on. So we come on to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. An in-depth review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is going to be challenging because honestly, I forgot that I even watched this film when I came and looked this early today. There's nothing wrong with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. In actual fact, it's done very well across all of the different aggregators. I mean, IMDb has it at 7.10, Rotten Tomatoes has it at 80, Metacritic at 66. And it is a bit of a relaunch of the Kingdom of the Apes franchise. So, let me start with the overview. So, many years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. So, I didn't watch all of the older Planet of the Apes movies. I've never really been that big on the franchise and the idea behind it. There's just something about the whole post-apocalyptic world, monkeys are our overlords kind of thing that's never really appealed to me. But from big fans of the franchise, tell me that this is a really good reboot, relaunch of the franchise. It was getting a bit stale with the last couple of movies, and this is a great reboot. And it feels like that's what they're trying to achieve here. This is set many years. It's actually generations. I think it's described as generations later. So you get a bit of a trail in from the last movie, and then there is a very distinct separation of time. So obviously, hundreds of years have passed, not just a couple of decades. So much time has passed, in fact, that the apes have pretty much forgotten what humanity was like. They're wandering around in the ruins of our cities and where the things we built, and they don't seem to understand that these things are not natural and they were built by man. That's how far time has gone and how much people have forgotten, or the apes have forgotten. Um, it's interesting. It sets up some intriguing characters. Noah, Sona, and I think Raka was the other. Again, it's so hard to remember. Anaya, that was it. Um, Played by Owen Teague, Lydia Peckham, and Travis Jeffrey. Very interesting set of characters. Obviously, they are going to develop them over the next few films. But for this one, all we need to focus on really are the characters of Owen Teague, Noah, uh, Freya Allen's Maya or Nova. She starts off as Nova, and then you find out that her real name is Maya, or May, sorry. And then Kevin Durand's Proximus Caesar. These are really the main characters that you need to worry about in the film. Peter Macon's Raka is also kind of important, and William H. Macy's Trevelyan is also relatively important as well. But those Freya Allen, Kevin Durand, and Owen Teague are playing the three main characters in this. Owen Teague is the young Noah ape whose his village is raided, and his family and his friends are all taken away to be slave labor to Proxima Caesar's empire, which is where the Kingdom of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, sort of comes into this, because it's kind of a reflection of mankind. So you're looking at early, 300 BC mankind, that level of technology to some extent, mixed in with some human technology. So really, the apes, they haven't really discovered how to make weapons like we have, but they are, learning from some of the junk that we left behind. So they've sort of got basic electricity working in certain weapons and things like that. So into this interesting mix, what you have is a story of essentially young boy, his village is raided, and all of his loved ones are taken away from him by a bigger village with a bunch of bullies in it. The bigger village is run by Proxima Caesar, who sees himself as some sort of emperor. It feels very Roman to me, in the way that it's set up with the colors and the way things are put together. It feels like they're almost like a Roman league, and that kind of adds up with their technology level. It's almost as if they're in that level of, that early in the in the last 2 millennia of recorded human history, that few hundred years after the Bible is set, essentially, with Caesar and what his teachings are being essentially, they're not quite portrayed as a Bible and a religion in this, but you can see where the seeds of that are being laid within this, with Raka, played by Peter Macon. Is it Raka? Raka? Oh, it's so hard for all the names. Or Koro. Oh, one of the big apes, who is very reminiscent of one of the larger apes in the first movies, is a historian. And he has this little symbol medallion, which is to remember the way of Caesar. Apes should not hurt other apes or kill other apes. And they're stronger together. That was one of the things from the older movies. Uh, that that line of that kind of religious line almost finds its way into the film. Noah finds his way to his villagers and family and finds Proxima Caesar. He gets captured, but along the way he meets May, or as they call her, Nova. They think she's a human. Humans at this point are kind of like herd animals to some extent. There's not many of them left, but when you do find them, they're in groups. And as I understand it from the original movies, what happened was there was a virus that made humans silent. It essentially robbed them of their intelligence, switching and made apes more intelligent. So it kind of switched around the places, apparently. Uh, but May is not affected by this virus for some reason, and she's able to move around freely, but she disguises herself as a normal human, with the exception that she appears to be wearing what look like normal clothes almost, whereas every other human is wearing rags and loincloths and things. So it's pretty obvious there's something going on with her. There is then an undercurrent in the story, and you get a tantalizing look into what's possibly happened over the last few hundred years as the story unfolds. And into this mix, after Noah has met up with Nova and he discovers that she can actually speak, which is unusual because none of the other humans can speak, but she can. She can actually speak more clearly than any of the apes can. She sounds like she's been taken straight out of 2024 and just planted in this world. And it's obvious that she was traveling with some people, and Proxima Caesar's men or apes are after her for some reason. When you finally do meet up with Proxima Caesar, you find out why. It's because he's basically got himself a human who's teaching him how to do things that shouldn't be being taught to. Essentially, if you think about it this way, if we landed on a planet of human beings who were if I went back in time to 200 BC, the things I know could be incredibly dangerous, both to me and to the people there. Teaching them how to build weapons like guns and bombs like we have today could, they haven't built up any respect for that technology, and therefore they just want to use it for their own ends and means, where the idea is that if you discover fire, if you discover gunpowder, if you discover nuclear weapons, you're supposed to have a level of respect for the technology because you've worked out how it works and you understand its level of destruction. Whereas if you give a machine gun to a child, they'll pull the trigger and they won't really understand what the consequences of their actions are going to be. That's kind of the vibe you're getting here. And with Proxima Caesar, he's got a god complex. He's called himself Caesar after the original Caesar, which everyone remembers him as being the, you know, the alpha ape who started all of this, and you know where they all sort of come from. And he's very much an emperor. It's weird it calls itself Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes because I keep coming back to Empire, like Roman Empire. But it's very much he's got his kingdom. He's trying to break into this human vault. He's trying to get whatever's in there. He doesn't really know what's in there, but he wants the technology in there. It's obvious at that point that May knows what's in there, or at least has a suspicion of what's in there. She wants something from there. Events overtake, big set pieces, lots and lots of explosions and some really good action sequences. And the end of it is it's left in a very interesting place where there is it's kind of teasing you. It's like it's leaving you at a point where humans and apes could be friends or could not be friends, and this could all go horribly wrong. And it's very clever in the way it does it, and it ends in this really, really clever and really well put together last piece where you have May and Noah in different places, both looking up at the same stars, and you're wondering to yourself, what are they contemplating? Because it looks like when you look at Noah's eyes, he looks determined, yet he looks determined, and yeah, you're sort of seeing that worry. And in May's eyes, you're seeing hope and yet fear. And it's kind of like, right, well, it's either these guys are going to make friends or they're going to have a big war. Considering there's probably 2 or 3 movies to come out of this reboot, I'm going on the probably lots of fighting side of things. But in essence, it's a really fantastic reboot. I I have to admit, I'd forgotten about most of what I watched in this film. I really enjoyed it while I watched it. I really enjoyed the movie, and now I've gone back to it. Some of it has come back, and I've been able to give you a relatively good overview of what's going on. Um, but I can't say that I was totally drawn into this, and I think it's because just simply because I've never really been interested in this particular material. Um, and I don't know why, really. I mean, I wasn't really big on the Mad Max movies, if I'm being honest with you. That whole post-apocalyptic world thing always depresses me a little bit, um, because I can just so easily see how we could get there. And sometimes you do think to yourself, yeah, the human race sometimes doesn't deserve to be where it is or deserves whatever it's going to give itself. However, metacritical arguments aside and, nervous breakdowns and everything else put to one side for a moment, this is certainly a film worth watching. I will go and see the next one as I'm interested to see where they're taking this to. This is the second film I've seen this year with Kevin Durand in it. The first one being the vampire movie I watched a few weeks ago, which was Abigail, because he's in that. He is a very, very gifted man, very gifted actor. And that's not to take away from anyone else in this film, but he plays this bad guy really, really well. And I would so like to see him back in the next film as the big bad. Whether or not we're going to get that, you'll find out in the movie, or whether or not it's even possible, you can try and figure it out for yourself. All I'll say is that I don't think it's a done deal as to whether or not he could come back or not in the next film. So, you guys can leave a comment as to whether or not you think that's gonna work out for him. But yeah, he's exceptionally good in this film. Really, really good. Proxima Caesar is really well played and is both menacing and obviously just crazy at the same time. It reminds me of there's 2 comparisons I want to make in this film. One is to the bad guy, Handsome Jack from Borderlands 2, the sociopathic, nigh on genius but crazy kind of bad guy, and that's Proxima Caesar. He's smart, He's smart for his level of technology. He's smart for the apes around him, and he's cunning with it. But he's also a bit crazy. And there's that those sorts of things come together to make really good kind of nemesis for characters, because you never quite know what they're going to do. You never quite know how they're going to react. You just know that they are clever enough that whatever it's going to be is not going to be good for your protagonists. So they do make excellent bad guy characters in movies. I'm just looking up. There is a Horizon Zero Dawn. That was it. Another game which crept into my mind. And obviously, Horizon Zero Dawn is a game that was released in 2017, so it's inspired by games like films like Planet of the Apes. But this had a real kind of Horizon Zero Dawn feel to it. The whole film, where it's that far human, the remains of humanity, bits of the Golden Gate, but you can tell where they are. They're in America and they're in Los Angeles somewhere. That's obvious from the various things that are left over, but everything is rotting, everything is falling apart. So it's obvious, at least 100 years has passed, if not more. I mean, it says many generations, so that could be 100 to 200 to 100, 200, 300 years, perhaps. I wouldn't say anything more than that, probably. But you have this real uh, uh, idea that everything is starting to fall apart and rot away that was left by humanity. Metal was rusting through, plants have overgrown everything. You look off and you see all these trees and you realize they're not trees, they're actually the skeletal remains of buildings covered in plants. And that's all really, really well put together. It's really fantastically done. Yeah, as far as set pieces go, special effects, it's obviously there. There's obviously a lot of CGI going on in this film, but it's very well done. Um, yeah, I feel like I'm finding good things to say about this film. Um, I've got a couple of. There are a few things to note. It's a little on the slow side at points, I found. It's building up these new characters. Supposed to be, it feels very much like the first part of a three-part series of movies. It really does. Whether or not they're trying to make a whole new universe or something out of this, I don't know, but it does feel like they are setting up a set of characters for, like a trilogy of movies, very much like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. I get that feeling and that vibe from this movie. So it is a bit slow at points because it's taking time to help you to to know the various characters, some of their motivations. I'm not sure it needed to dawdle so much from the point where it starts off really quick. There's some excitement, there's a bit of action, and then it slows right down. It hits it just hits jello at that point. It's sort of really slows itself right down as it builds up this history and opens up the world a little more to the viewer, which is fine. But it does mean that you've got, in your 2 hours and 40 minutes, you've got like this hour section where it's just, come on, you know, it does a good job of keeping some of the tension going, because Noah is obviously trying to find his family and he's following a trail. But yeah, it's just too much right in the middle of it, for my liking. I was sort of sitting there through that part thinking, need to do something to bring up the tempo a little bit. I've personally felt they could have weighted some of the exposition towards the end, which they didn't do. They did some very clever things towards the end. I mean, Noah and his friends find a book, a children's book, inside of this human um, bunker. And in that children's book, it's teaching simple words, and it uses zoo animals to teach those simple words. So, of course, they come across the pages with gorillas and monkeys behind bars, which doesn't look good for the humans. As innocent as it is, you get an interesting view of what they see, not what humans see. And you do think to yourself, oh, that's bad. And yeah, so more exposition could have been done, spread out a little more throughout the movie, rather than getting huge, just loads of it dumped at different points, which seems to be a bit of a thing with modern movies. It's like telling the story is you get these great set pieces and then you get exposition, set piece, exposition, set piece, exposition. It's like you can't do the exposition with the set pieces. You can explain stuff as you go. I know it's not normal for some like two people to be burning down the street, sprinting away from bullets, and then they sort of like start talking about their past. I know you can't do something like that, be silly, but you don't have to progress every part of the story in set pieces with people sitting around fires or quietly planning something in the background and you learn of things, or you put two characters together in a room, you figure out two human beings in essentially what is a prison, and then let them start talking and you learn things that it's sort of done. I think for this movie, so yeah, it's not perfect, but it is enjoyable. I wouldn't say I definitely recommend a watch, unless you're not into to apes, in which case avoid it. But I think for this film, I'm going to score it 3.2 out of 5. It's above the average mark, and it's definitely worth a watch. But I'm not sure that I would say it's really enjoyable for the time you watch it through. But yeah, just be warned, it is a little bit. It does slow down a little bit, and there are points where you're just sort of sitting there going, come on, get going, get going. I know why they're doing it. That's probably the worst part. Is I understand they're trying to reboot this whole franchise in some way, and they do it with a really interesting story, do it in a really interesting way, but they're using old tropes. This stuff that's been done before. They're giving you a whole new cast of characters, and they're building them up in a way that's been done in other films. Lord of the Rings and Star Wars are good examples of that. It's just Star Wars had Star Wars got away with it because of the time and the fact that some of this stuff hadn't been done before. If you think of the way Star Wars was made, you had action and then you had exposition. So you got like the whole bit at the beginning with Luke and he's flying around. There's exposition. Then he's flying around this speeder. And then he gets attacked by the Jawas. There's a bit of exposition. Then he flies home and he finds his uncle and aunt are dead. And it's exposition. And then he goes to the thing. There's the canteen. So you see what I mean? It's kind of all splitting bits of action and excitement with a bit of exposition. But Star Wars does the exposition in tiny little bits. It's like the action is a foot wide, and the exposition is an inch wide. That's the difference. Whereas this one, the action is just to do it in time. The action is 15 minutes, and the exposition is 15 to 20 minutes. Action 15, exposition 20 to 30 minutes. Action 15. You see what I mean? It's too much of exposition breaking up the action, and that's kind of where this thing goes a little bit wrong in my mind. Yeah. So 3.2 out of 5, and that brings us to the end of all the movies this week because yeah, frankly, I did not have time just to get out and see anything else this week. So next week, I am going to see Furiosa. I have booked it already. There is also another movie I'm very interested in seeing called Assassin with what's that chap's name? He's a bit of a hot new thing on the he was in Top Gun. Names. Names. See if I can find him. Not going to help me out, is it? No. It would be nice if it was on the top page of my app, but it's not. Here we go. Glenn Powell plays Hitman. That was it, not Assassins. Hitman. He appears to, um, from what I can tell in the trailer, he appears to pretend to be a variety of different hitmen for people's, I don't know, fantasies or something like that, until eventually he meets someone who thinks he's a real hitman, or he does this for a woman who kills people. Something like that happens in the trailer. It looks like it could be quite a lot of fun. I don't know if it's going to be an award-winning movie, but it does look like quite a lot of fun. And Glenn Powell does seem to turn up in quite good fun movies. So I shall see if I can get out to see that as well before next week's podcast. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Tom unfortunately could not join me again. I do not know when he will return. He is currently off saving something, the world, the planet. I don't know, but he will return at some point in the future, I believe. If he's absent any for much longer, I will send out a search party. But this is our 50th episode. I had planned on doing something a little bit more fun than just the two individual movie reviews. The only thing I can really add to this is that after I went back and watched Fall Guy for a second time with my son. He really enjoyed that. He's into Formula One racing, so it makes sense that he would be into, I remember he likes Destruction Derby. I've taken him to see a couple of these shows where stuntmen show you what they do. He's always been into that kind of thing, so I expected him to enjoy that. I sat down, so I sort of thought to myself, I'll see if this because it kept reminding me, as I said in the review, it kept reminding me of older movies like Cannonball Run and Smokey and the Bandits and Hooper and various films from the 1970s, Jackie Chan movies especially. So I went back and had a look at the Cannonball Run, and it holds up pretty well, the Cannonball Run. There are moments in it where you think, oh yeah, but that's not the joke we should be making, or that's a little bit close to the mark. But there's not much in there like that, if I'm being completely honest with you. Considering it's from the 1970s, normally when you watch films from the 1970s or the early 80s, you're sitting there and there's parts where you just cover your eyes and ears and just accept the fact that that is what people said about the sort of jokes people made about gay people or other things back then. But it actually holds up really, really, really well. Mostly because the film's premise is about racing across America in really fast cars on highways where you can only really do 55 miles an hour. So most of it is just like two fingers up to the government and law enforcement. And you know how all Americans are free and free capitalists. Um, but it's full of amazing stunts. Jackie Chan's in there. I can't remember if I mentioned it last time around, but very young Jackie Chan is in it. There's some really great. There's loads of brilliant stunts. There's a moment where I completely forgot about this. There's Burt Reynolds' character lands a plane in the middle of a town so they can pick up a 6-pack of beer and then takes off again. And then they got loads of stunts on cars. There's cars being flipped through. There's a that these two guys drive into the car park and then into the front of a hotel for no reason. There's a car that two guys drive into a swimming pool. All sorts of stupid things that they actually had to do in real life to make the movie. And it's that level of kind of. I was watching it and thinking, yeah, this is what Hitman Fall Guy reminds me of. This is what I loved so much about the movie. It's all the stunts are pretty real, and the Fall Guy, as I said, it transposes that. It shows you what's real and what's CGI in the actual film itself. Yeah, so I sort of tested my own theory on that and figured out, yeah, that's why I enjoyed that movie so much. So as I said in the review, as useless as it is, for me to repeat this now, but yeah, essentially, that movie's done very well for itself. It's I think it's something like 85% on Rotten Tomatoes and around 60-70% on Metacritic. It's again about 7 or 8 out of 10 on IMDb. It's doing very well for itself. But I think if you are like me and you probably grew up, in your 40s or 50s, and you enjoyed a lot of this sort of TV and movies when you were a kid or young man, then you're probably going to enjoy The Fall Guy, as it does play to those old films really, really well. Anyway, enough of that. That's enough of this. We shall be back next week with episode 51. We will have an overview of Furiosa, hopefully Hitman, and an in-depth review of If. And as I say, if you do go and watch If this weekend, take some Kleenex. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful weekend. See you next week. Goodbye. As for you, YouTube, stay frosty. I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Says goodbye, and then he doesn't actually hit the stop button. This is going to take another 5 seconds. Just enjoy the silence.